before the cross, before the missionaries, before the first European ship ever kissed African shores, there was already light. From the sands of Kemet to the forests of Yoruba, from the mountains of Nubia to the rivers of Congo, Africa knew God. Civilizations rose not by accident, but by design, guided by divine law, sacred balance, and cosmic order. Yet somewhere along the line, the narrative was stolen. We were told that Africa was primitive until salvation arrived, that our gods were demons, our wisdom witchcraft, and our ancestors heathens. But the truth is far older, far deeper, and far more powerful. This is not just a story of faith. This is the story of how Africa's gods were erased, how its people were reprogrammed, and how the world forgot who the first theologians truly were. Tonight, we remember. Chapter 1. The birth of African civilization, Kemet and the cosmic order. Long before Greece wrote its philosophy or Rome built its empire, the Nile Valley gave birth to a civilization that fused science, art, and spirituality into one sacred system. Kemet, the Black Land. In Kemet, religion was not separate from life, it was life. The people lived under Ma'at, the eternal law of truth, justice, and balance. Every decision, from the ruling of kings to the weighing of a heart, was measured against Ma'at's feather. The gods of Kemet were not distant deities, they were forces of nature itself. Ra, the sun, symbolized rebirth and illumination. Osiris embodied life, death, and resurrection. Isis, the mother of all, represented divine wisdom and healing. And Horus, the falcon of light, became the emblem of righteous kingship. Kemet's temples were not just for prayer, they were universities. Priests were astronomers, architects, and healers. They aligned temples with stars, measured time by celestial cycles, and recorded the sacred in stone. In the Kemetic worldview, man was not a sinner to be saved, but a soul to be perfected. Heaven was not a distant paradise, but the continuation of a just life. The Book of Coming Forth by Day, later misnamed the Book of the Dead, revealed that after death, the soul would stand before Osiris. Its heart would be weighed against Ma'at's feather. If it was light, pure in truth, the soul would live eternally. Africa's oldest wisdom began here, that morality, balance, and divine order were inseparable. Kemet's light would travel south beyond the Nile's cataracts to inspire another kingdom, Nubia, the first Black Empire. And there, in the lands of Kush, the spirit of Ma'at would take new form, carried by kings and queens whose reigns shook the world. Chapter 2. The Nubian Link, the first Black Kingdoms. South of Kemet lay Nubia, known as Tasseti, the land of the bow. This was not a shadow of Egypt, but its sister, its equal, and in truth its mother. The Nubians built pyramids of their own, smaller but steeper, symbolizing the soul's climb to the divine. Their temples were dedicated to Amun, the Hidden One, the unseen essence of creation. In the city of Napata, priests declared that kings ruled not by inheritance, but by divine revelation. If the king failed Ma'at, he could be removed, for even power bowed before morality. During the 25th dynasty, Nubia rose again under kings like Piye and Tahaka. They did not conquer Egypt as enemies, but restored her as heirs, uniting north and south under one sacred banner. And alongside these kings stood the Kandaks, warrior queens who ruled and fought as equals. Their crowns bore lions, their armies carried spears, and their wisdom carried the destiny of nations. Centuries later, when Christianity reached Nubia, it found not pagans, but philosophers. The Nubians translated the faith into their own tongue, built cathedrals on ancient temples, and hid their gods within new symbols. Behind every cross, the Ankh survived. Even Amen, whispered at the end of every Christian prayer, carried the breath of Amun, the god of Nubia. But as the Nile flowed west, so too did Africa's spiritual current. to the forests and kingdoms where drums spoke and the gods walked among men. Chapter 3. The Yoruba Pantheon, Divine Order in West Africa. In the lands of modern-day Nigeria, the Yoruba civilization rose, a spiritual powerhouse governed by divine structure and sacred destiny. At its highest point stood Olodumare, the supreme creator. Beneath him flowed hundreds of divine intermediaries, the Orisha, gods and goddesses who personified the forces of nature and morality. Ogun, god of iron and labor, taught discipline and sacrifice. Yemoja, mother of waters, governed compassion and fertility. Shango, lord of thunder, wielded justice. And Orunmila, the oracle of wisdom, guided mankind through Ifa, an ancient system of divination and ethics. The Yoruba believed the divine existed in everything: stone, wind, blood, and rhythm. Through drumming, trance, and prayer, they entered communion with the unseen. To them, character was worship. Iwalewa, character is beauty. Even when enslaved and scattered across the Atlantic, the Yoruba gods endured. They hid beneath the faces of Catholic saints in Cuba, danced in Brazil through candomblé, and spoke in whispers in Haiti through Vodun. Wherever Africans survived, their gods survived too. And west of Yoruba, in the golden lands of Ghana and Benin, kingdoms arose that made spirituality a matter of state, where kings ruled by divine covenant, and the soul of a nation was sacred. Chapter 4. The Dahomey and Akan kingdoms, the spirit of nationhood. In Dahomey and among the Akan of Ghana, the divine and political were one. The Dahomeans worshipped Maulisa, twin creators, one male, one female, symbolizing perfect cosmic balance. Around them danced countless Vodun, spirits of water, fertility, fire, and protection. To the Akan, God was Nyame, the supreme sky father, and Asaseya, the earth mother. No action began without asking her permission, for the Akan believed that to offend the earth was to offend the Creator himself. Their kings were not tyrants, they were guardians of divine trust. In Ashanti, the golden stool symbolized the soul of the people, not the throne of a ruler. It was said to have descended from the heavens, a covenant between the ancestors and the living. To sit upon it unworthily was treason against the divine. This was Africa's moral monarchy, leadership rooted in spirit, not greed. But deeper still, beyond the forests and kingdoms, lay another truth. Across the Congo and into the southern lands, Africa's spirituality spoke through circles, symbols, and energy itself. Chapter 5. The Bantu and Congo beliefs. The voice of the ancestors. The Bantu peoples, spread across Central and Southern Africa, saw existence as a circle of life energy. The Bakongo mapped it in the Dikenga cosmogram, 4 quadrants symbolizing dawn, noon, dusk, and night, birth, life, death, and rebirth. At the center was Kalunga, the boundary between the world of the living and the dead. To cross it was not to die, but to change form. Their supreme deity, Nzambi-Mpungu, lived not in temples, but in everything. Through healers, diviners, and dreams, the living communicated with ancestors who remained ever-present guides. The Zulu and Xhosa called their ancestors the Amadlozi, spirits who intervened in dreams, storms, and omens. They believed that power flowed through right living, unity, and remembrance. In the Bantu worldview, there was no heaven above and hell below. There was harmony or imbalance, energy or disconnection. Their cosmology, astonishingly, mirrors modern quantum physics. Energy never dies, it transforms. But just as Africa perfected balance between body and soul, a new religion arrived, one that would promise salvation while severing memory. Chapter 6. The Arrival of Christianity. The collision of faith. Christianity's arrival in Africa began long before colonization. In Egypt and Nubia, where Africans helped shape early theology. But centuries later, when it returned through Europe's ships, it was no longer a message of faith. It was a weapon of control. Missionaries came with Bibles in one hand and empire in the other. They burned shrines, banned drums, and renamed the gods as devils. Conversion became the price of survival. Yet Africa recognized familiar patterns: resurrection, divine motherhood, and the eternal soul. All teachings Africa had known millennia before. The cross resembled the Ankh, and the story of Osiris and Isis echoed through Christ and Mary. The conquerors brought our own wisdom back to us, stripped of color and context. Faith became a mask for colonization, and soon the gods of Africa were silenced, not by sword, but by shame. Chapter 7. The Erasure. How the gods were silenced. Colonialism did not just claim land, it claimed the spirit. Through mission schools, laws, and language, Africans were taught to fear their own ancestors. Spirituality became witchcraft, culture became backwardness, temples were torn down, and sacred names forgotten. Yet even in silence the gods survived. They hid in the drumbeats of gospel choirs, in the call and response of churches, and in the rhythm of African prayer. When the world saw darkness, Africa saw ancestry. When the world saw idols, Africa saw identity. The gods were never dead, only waiting. And now, in the 21st century, their voices are rising again through history, art, and awakening. Chapter 8. The Reawakening. Africa's return to its spiritual identity. Across the continent and the diaspora, Africa is remembering. From Lagos to Accra, from Atlanta to Nairobi, young Africans are rediscovering their ancestral gods, not as idols, but as identity. They study the Ifa corpus, rebuild Kemetic temples, and call upon ancestors with pride instead of fear. They understand now that to reclaim the gods is not to reject modern faith, it is to remember where it all began. Africa is realizing that her story did not start in chains or deserts, but in temples and stars, that her prophets were her kings and her priests were her scientists. Reclamation is not rebellion, it is remembrance. And in that remembrance, Africa is finding her voice again. Final call to action. Before Christianity, before colonization, before the world's history was rewritten, Africa was the cradle of spirit. Africa was the mother of balance. Africa was the first to speak to God. To reclaim this truth is not blasphemy, it is healing. To honor the ancestors is not rebellion, it is restoration. The gods of Africa are not gone, they are in you. They are your rhythm, your intuition, your courage, your voice. So rise, reclaim your name, reclaim your story, reclaim your divinity, because the world will never truly know truth until Africa remembers hers. This is Africa Reclaimed. If you believe the truth must be told, share this. Subscribe, comment, help us bring the gods of Africa back to the world.